Hello, beautiful souls. This is Atul Krishna Das, one more time here with you. So, today we will continue with Karma Yoga. And in previous episodes, we were discussing about the importance to be kind with oneself when we are not achieving the goals that we have set. Even it could be mainly on a spiritual life, but also on our day to day and in our material life. But today we're going to explore a little bit more about the specific goals that we have set for ourselves. Because if at the end of the day the goals are not the right ones, then even if we're trying too hard to try to make something happen, it may not be the best for us. And in order to explore how we should focus our energy, according to Lord Krishna, once again, we have here the wonderful Krsnacandra Das.
Hare
Lord,
Krishna, Atul Krishna Prabhu. I'm very, very grateful to be here a third time in a row. It's been an amazing honor and wonderful challenge to give whatever I have to the full degree. So I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you so much.
thank you. It's been my pleasure to be able to expand all these, verses together.
Amazing. Good. That makes me very happy. Thank you. Okay, let us start with a prayer. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Titam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vrindaye Tulasi Deviai Priyavai Keshavasucha Krishna Bhakti Pradidevi Satyavatyai Namo Namaha Vanshakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebho Vaishnavebho Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shreyan Svadharmo Viguna Paradharmat Anustitat Svadharme Nidanami Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though they may be faulty, than another's duties. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties. For to follow another's path is dangerous. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to mention that today marks the disappearance day the 17th anniversary of the disappearance of my beloved Guru Maharaj, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Goswami Maharaj. And whatever I offer to you today in this broadcast, everything that is good completely comes from him. Whatever is imperfect, whatever mistakes I make, those are entirely my own responsibility. So I just want to take this opportunity to remember him very fondly and every wonderful thing he ever gave me, how he changed the whole trajectory of my spirit soul. So, in our previous talks, we explored how deeply our nature shapes us. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 33, Sri Krishna explains that even a person of knowledge acts according to their own prakriti. So mere suppression is neither practical nor sustainable. To be candid, many of us have experienced this in our own lives, that trying to force ourselves into something we're not only creates tension within our hearts. Then, in verse 34, Krishna cautions us regarding the forces of attraction and aversion, raga and dvesha. He reminds us that while we cannot deny our own nature, we also cannot allow ourselves to be ruled by our uncontrolled impulses. So we're standing in between, neither repressing nor indulging, but learning how to live with self awareness. This balanced path is a hallmark of the Bhagavad Gita, not falling into extremes. And that is best expressed in chapter 2, verse 16, when Krishna says, "There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough." So, likewise, we have to control the urges, but we cannot repress. Now, in verse 35, Krishna brings these ideas to their natural conclusion that true harmony in life doesn't come from imitation or repression, but from embracing one's own path, one's svadharma, even if it appears imperfect at first. Because ultimately, authenticity, aligned with divine guidance, is far safer than perfectly executing a role that was never meant for us. I realized this not just philosophically, but very personally during a time in my life when I was trying to become someone I thought I should be, rather than honestly understanding who I actually am. 20 years ago, I became drawn to practicing kendo, the modern Japanese martial art of fencing derived from traditional Japanese swordsmanship. I simultaneously practiced Muso Jikiden Einshin Ryu Iaido, which was more traditional. And at the time, I wasn't drawn to it because it was me. I was drawn to it because I felt I needed to become stronger, more disciplined, and exude a warrior or Kshatriya energy. I was trying to shape myself into an ideal that I had in my own mind, my own speculation. And for a while, that motivation carried me. I practiced at least 2 to 3 times a week at multiple dojos. I trained and pushed myself to succeed. And eventually, I achieved the rank of Nidan in Kendo, or second degree black belt. But after some years passed, I started to realize that real growth wasn't forcing myself into an image. It would come from understanding my own nature, my own rhythm, and my own way of progressing. I believe the moments where I improved the most were not when I was imitating others, but when I became more honest and more present and more aligned with who I actually was. And that shift, as subtle as it was, helped me to understand something important. Progress in spiritual life works similarly. In another phase of my life, I began to notice something about myself that I had a strong tendency to try to please others. I wanted harmony and I wanted to be accommodating, but over time, I started to feel a kind of inner tension because even though everything looked fine on the outside, something inside me felt like it was being pushed aside. And I had to come to a difficult realization that in trying to be everything for everyone, I was no longer being honest about who I actually was. So I began to practice something very simple but very uncomfortable: learning to say no, learning to set boundaries. And it didn't always feel good. Sometimes it meant disappointing people. And sometimes there was blatant pushback, especially at my workplace. When I stopped saying yes all the time to opportunities to volunteer for overtime, it made things very uncomfortable, to say the least. But my greatest reward was the realization that time absolutely trumped money. But gradually, I felt something return: a sense of an alignment, a sense of honesty. Because sometimes what looks like kindness externally can actually be a quiet form of dishonesty internally. And looking back, I can see that wasn't selfishness. That was the beginning of understanding my own Svadharma. And in the same way, Krishna is guiding Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 35, not to imitate another's path, even if it appears more elevated, but to stand firmly in his own nature and perform his own duty, because that's where real spiritual progress begins. In chapter 2, verse 5, Arjuna tells Krishna that it is far better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. And this is when he was feeling very, he just didn't want to kill his mentors, Bhishma and Dronacharya. So, from our point of view, too, it seems most virtuous to avoid a fight and to spare lives and give up wealth and power. But Krishna told Arjuna, get up and prepare to fight. After conquering your enemies, you will enjoy a flourishing kingdom. They are already put to death by my arrangement, and you, O Savyasachin, can be but an instrument in the fight. Arjuna had been training for this moment for his whole life, and nobody was more qualified than him. The Kauravas had lorded over power. They attempted to disrobe Draupadi, attempted to kill Pandavas, including Bhima, Arjuna's own brother, and were determined not to give the Pandavas any land at all, despite the fact that it was their birthright. Justice had to be served, and Krishna revealed Arjuna to be that instrument of justice and Krishna's own Leela, his own pastimes. There were instances in the scriptures of souls acting against their Varna, their wherever they were born, whether they were born to be priests or warriors, etc. One that comes to mind is the sage Vishvamitra, and he went from being a warrior Kshatriya to a priestly Brahmin. And Parashuram, who was an incarnation of Krishna, went from being a priestly Brahmin to a warrior Kshatriya to fight all the unjust kings in the world. In the face of adversity, Arjuna wanted to step away from his warrior duties, but Krishna essentially told him not to imitate these previous transcendences of one's Varna. So Arjuna was dealt a difficult task. and it appeared far from perfect, just due to the difficulty of what he was about to do, as far as how difficult it was to fight with skill, but also with his heart being for even for his own foes. But Krishna realigning Arjuna to his warrior path, rehoning him to his true nature, perfectly encapsulated the essence of this verse, chapter 3, verse 35. These examples show that transcendence of one's Varn is real, but it's rare and it cannot be imitated artificially. There's another dimension to this verse that I have been reflecting on recently. Krishna tells us that it is better to follow our own nature, even imperfectly, than to imitate someone else. And we often apply this practically in terms of career, lifestyle, or external duties. But it also applies internally, even in our spiritual life. Each of us is being guided from within. Krishna is in every one of our souls in the form of Paramatma, or God in one's own heart. Krishna is the Chaita Guru, and he will guide us if we are truly receptive to listen. Sometimes that guidance may even contradict what we expect from ourselves or what others expect from us. Inner guidance is confirmed through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And that guidance doesn't always come as a loud voice. It often comes as a subtle attraction, a kind of inner illumination, a sense that this feels right, it feels true. And this draws my heart forward. In the Vedic tradition, we hear about divine illumination, about our intelligence being guided towards truth. But that illumination is not something cold or impersonal. As our practice deepens, it becomes something living, something relational, something very deeply personal. And here is where we realize how very important this verse is. Because even in spiritual life, we cannot imitate another person's realization. What is revealed in one's heart may not be revealed in the same way to another. And if we try to artificially adopt someone else's mood, someone else's realization, someone else's inner world, we may actually lose touch with the very guidance that Krishna is giving us directly. So 335 is inviting us not just to be externally authentic, but internally honest, to honor the way Krishna is guiding our heart, even if it is subtle, even if it is still unfolding, and even if it feels incomplete, because that sincere and perfect alignment, it's far more powerful than a perfect imitation of something that is not yet truly ours. To embrace that true path requires courage, but this courage ultimately proves fruitful due to Krishna's own promise in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. At this point, I'm reminded of a powerful example from a popular series called Star Trek The Next Generation. There's an episode called Tapestry where Captain Jean Luc Picard is given the chance to go back in time and change a mistake from his youth to become a more cautious and more perfect version of himself. But when he sees the result of that change, he realizes something deeply unsettling. That by avoiding risk at all costs, by trying to become a more ideal version of himself, that he lost his edge, his courage, and his individuality. He became ordinary. He was stationed on the same starship, but he was no longer the captain, and he led a very dreary career. And ultimately, he says something very striking near the end of the episode, that he would rather die as the person he truly was than to live as someone who was not authentic to himself. And in a sense, that reflects the same principle we're hearing in Bhagavad Gita 3:35, because spiritual life is not about becoming a polished imitation. It's about becoming aligned with who we are truly meant to be. Excuse me. I can think of two examples in our divine path which are prime examples of finding and performing our true duty with courage despite severe adversity. And the first example is that of Prahlad Maharaj. His father, Hiranyakashipu, was one of the most powerful demons in history. Prahlad's schooling as a child steered him toward truly being his father's son, continuing in the family business of ruling the material energy, ruling the material universe through power. But Prahlad's destiny and Svadharma took a different turn due to the fact that his own mother was learning from Narada Muni, a great devotee of Krishna. Narada Muni told Prahlad's mother about the great pastimes of Krishna while Prahlad was in his mother's womb. And it may not be easy to understand how divine knowledge could be imparted to Prahlad while he was still in the womb, but consider how even modern science encourages mothers to listen to certain types of music to benefit their unborn children later in their lives. The Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 22, verse 54 states, "The verdict of all revealed scriptures is that by even a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all success." And that moment is technically 1/11th of a second, by the way. Thus, the power and mercy of Krishna's pure devotee cannot be denied and should not be underestimated. Prahlad's association with Narada Muni left a permanent impression upon Prahlad's heart. And even when he was being taught about the principles of power and conquest by his father's demonic teachers, Prahlad couldn't stop talking about the glories of Krishna. And as a consequence, Prahlad's father attempted to torture or otherwise inflict pain on his own son. But the protective power of Krishna and his holy name protected Prahlad. And finally, when the demonic Hiranyakashipu, frustrated by Prahlad's resilience, attempted to kill his own son, Krishna appeared in his divine protector avatar, Lord Nrsingadev, and he killed Hiranyakashipu, saving Prahlad from harm and saving the universe from Hiranyakashipu's dominion. Another saint similar to Prahlad is Srila Haridas Thakur. He was born Muslim in Bengal, India, in the mid 15th century, despite the fact that under the government at that time, that converting from Islam to another religion was apostasy punishable by death. Srila Haridas Thakur nonetheless took shelter from Sri Advaita Acharya and later Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself. As a result of Haridas Thakur's loyal faith in Krishna and the holy name and his holy name, he was sentenced to be caned in over 20 marketplaces. Like Prahlad, he survived through his faith and courage and by the mercy of Krishna. When a prostitute was sent to corrupt Haridas Thakur and derail his spiritual devotion, he was not only able to resist, but he was able to convert that prostitute and help her chant the holy name and to be a great devotee herself. What we see in both Prahlad Maharaj and Srila Haridas Thakur is something very profound. Their external circumstances were extremely difficult, almost impossible by ordinary standards, but internally they were completely aligned. And that's the real essence of Bhagavad Gita 335. Because Svadharma is not always comfortable, it's not always socially approved, and it's not always easy. But when there is sincerity, when there is alignment with Krishna's guidance, then even the most difficult path becomes spiritually perfect. And when there is misalignment, even something that appears externally perfect can feel empty within. There was also a time in my life when following my path did not look practical at all. Everything externally was unstable. My family situation was very difficult. My academic path had already fallen apart. And at that same time, something awakened within me. I felt very much drawn toward Krishna consciousness and the principles of the Bhagavad Gita. And I moved toward a spiritual path that, from the outside, may not have appeared responsible or secure, because although spiritually it was very fulfilling, by other standards, the time that we take to meditate and to read the scripture during the day could be better spent doing material pursuits. In 2002 through 2004, I spent 2 to 3 months out of each year traveling with my guru, my spiritual teacher. And although by others' perceptions, it was a gap of time not easily explained in a professional resume, it was the greatest time of my life. My only regret is that I didn't spend even more time with my guru when I had the chance. And not everyone supported my choice at that time. In fact, there was strong opposition, even painful criticism from loved ones. So I was faced with a real question. Do I follow what appears safe and acceptable? Or do I follow what I feel Krishna is calling me toward? And I chose, imperfectly, uncertainly, but sincerely, to follow that inner calling. And looking back, I can say that decision, although it wasn't externally perfect, although it wasn't accepted by my peers or my family at the time, it was deeply aligned with me and it shaped the entire direction of my life. So when Krishna tells us that it's better to follow our own Dharma, even imperfectly, than to perform another's perfectly, he's inviting us into something deeply personal. He's asking us to live honestly, not just externally, but internally. To listen to that quiet guidance within the heart, that subtle pull, that sense of direction that may not always be fully clear, but it's sincerely ours. Because that guidance is not random, it's Krishna's presence gently leading us from within. And if we can learn to trust that, to follow it with sincerity, humility, and patience, then even our imperfections become meaningful. Even our struggles become part of the path. But if we ignore that inner calling and try to imitate what looks advanced or impressive in others, we risk losing touch with the very relationship that Krishna himself is trying to build with each of us. So the perfection of this verse is not in becoming flawless, It is in becoming aligned, aligned with our nature, aligned with our sincerity, and ultimately aligned with Krishna's guidance in our hearts. And in that alignment, even if it is imperfect, there is safety, there is progress, and there is the beginning of real spiritual life. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that reflection, Krishna Chandra. And I feel it's wonderful that, um, to think like, I am truly aligned. How do I feel about something, and not let yourself be guided by others' expectations or definitions of happiness or success.
Exactly. Yes.
But at the same time, I was wondering
Mhm.
about Dharma that originally may not feel internal, but also external. At the end of the day, I think that many roles that we have to take are actually part of our karma.
Yes.
So I was thinking, for example, one may have a dharma as a son, as a
Yes.
daughter, as a
Yes.
mother, as a
Right.
father, as a
Yep.
citizen.
Mm.
And sometimes those might be challenging and might be for a reason, because our soul needs to learn something.
Right.
And something that you mentioned made me think about, I don't know, Prahlad. Something that I truly, truly admire about him
Yes.
is
Yeah.
that even though his father was so cruel and tried to kill him so many times,
Yes.
he fulfilled his dharma as a son.
Mm.
He was always very respectful towards his father and
Absolutely.
very compassionate.
Yes.
The point, like, like, wow. For me,
Yes.
that's a true lesson.
He asked Krishna, he asked Nrsingadev for mercy for his father. And that's an important thing for us to remember. That, and even like if we think of Srila Haridas Thakur, he was also very merciful to those same men that were beating him up, that almost killed him. He was happy, he was wishing them well. He did not want them to be hurt. I think even he was concerned that if he didn't get hurt, that they would get in trouble with whoever was ordering them to hurt him. So I mean, that's pretty advanced mood to have. But what you mentioned about being a good son, etc. Like, I've dealt with that myself. I was the caretaker to my mother, and toward the end of her life, she wanted to go to like Christian meetings, and I never tried to tell her, like, I don't agree with this. I went with her, and that's. But the bottom line is, as long as we don't lose our perspective, as long as we don't give up permanently, then we're okay. We will be fine as long as we just don't give up and we keep going.
Thank you. I feel that's an excellent way to conclude. Like, there is a balance about our responsibilities to others
Mhm.
and our responsibility to ourselves. And only when we gather enough inner strength, we will be able to remain truthful under any circumstances. But we also need to be aware about where
Yes.
we're at.
Yes, internally we should always know who we are and where we're eventually going. What's our eventual plan? Because of course, there are times, for example, like I go to work and I respect, I respect my employer. I work for the government and I just do my duty, and then when I go home, I can do my spiritual activities. We like, very few of us are qualified to just become avadutas, to become like these very, very saintly people who have no connection to the material world. So there are times when we do have to at least pause and do our duties, but we always remember who we are, and we resume when it's appropriate, as soon as possible, ideally.
Thank you so much. I think it was very enlightening. this session today, and I want also to thank everybody who joined online, and I invite many others also to do so. We are in here every Monday at 8 a.m. and every Thursday at I'm sorry, every Monday at 7:30 p.m. and every Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.